Today, I will discuss the steps and mechanisms of blood coagulation. The blood coagulation involves platelets and clotting factors from 1 to 13. When a blood vessel is injured, blood clotting or coagulation is a crucial process that reduces excessive bleeding. Clotting factors involves a stepwise activation of certain substances, mostly proteins present in the blood or tissue fluids. The inactive from ready to activate when an injury occurs. Here are the clotting factors from factors 1 to factors 13. So the clot occurs when there is a trauma to the vascular wall, trauma to the blood, and the contact of blood with damaged endothelial cells. Mechanism of coagulation forms a waterfall sequence. The waterfall sequence is a process of coagulation that involves a cascade of reactions, which activates one factor that leads to the activation of the next. At the site of an open injury, the first platelets arrive and start sealing the wound, and this is where the coagulation simultaneously occurs. In the coagulation of the vessel wall, there are three main steps. The first steps is the formation of prothrombin activator. The second is the conversion of prothrombin to thrombin. And the third is the conversion of fibrinogen into fibrin. So let us further discuss this. For the first step, the formation of prothrombin, we have an extrinsic pathways. This happens when there is trauma outside the blood vessel. The activation begins with the exposed molecule of the vessel wall. So there are two steps involved in this. It activates the factor X to form the factor XA. The factor XA is the point where the extrinsic and intrinsic pathways meets. And then we have the intrinsic pathway. It forms prothrombin activator that begins in the blood itself and exposure of blood to collagen in traumatized vascular wall. It involves two steps. The various coagulation factors activate each other in a chain reaction, which activates factor X to factor XA. Then the two factors merge at the level of factor XA, the extrinsic and intrinsic pathways. The second step is the conversion of prothrombin to thrombin. This occurs at the surface of platelets, which form the platelet plug at the site of injury. Thrombin acts as a proteolytic enzyme. The prothrombin activator activates within the presence of calcium. And then the large amounts of thrombin cause further activation of platelets and enhance formation of the fibrin, which leads us to the last step, the conversion of fibrinogen into fibrin. The coagulation cascade forms a substance called the fibrin. During this step, the platelet plug acts like bricks and the fibrin acts like mortar. Together, they form a solid, stable clot. The fibrin makes up the mesh that stabilizes the platelet plug and holds together the red blood cell in a venous clot. So the blood clot is formed at the end of coagulation process that is composed of a meshwork thread running in all directions along with the entrapped blood cells and the plasma, which forms a solid mass clot. And then the last step, within the minutes, the fibrin meshwork begins to contract, squeezing out its fluid contents. This process, called clot retraction, is the final step in coagulation. It yields a resilient, insoluble clot that can withstand the friction of blood flow.